All right, so first one, we'll get right into it. There's been a lot of build-up around Florida stacking wins coming into this game, and Napier seemed to turn the tide in Gainesville, especially with this fan base. But do you really see a chance for Florida to actually upset Georgia this weekend? And if so, how?
I can see Florida keeping it close, for sure. Number one, it's a rivalry game, so you got to take all of that, all the emotions that are going to be balled up, understanding what this game means to more than just the players on the field, but everybody involved with both of these universities. That will keep the game close, and that right there alone will give you a chance. Now, can Florida not turn the football over? Can Florida play a clean game and not let Georgia completely overwhelm them as the game continues to go on down the field? That would be where they need to be. Also, Florida has been better defensively and has caused and created a couple of takeaways. And if you do that, you set yourself up to score, which is going to be a little bit easier for this young man. Sorry, my alarm went off that I meant to call you. But that right there will allow them and set them up to be better in scoring position, which you're going to need everything. DJ Lagway is a young quarterback, and Georgia treats young quarterbacks pretty badly. So understanding all those things, you're going to have a chance because with DJ Lagway, what he represents is hope. He represents hope for this university, this football team. And when you have hope, you got a chance. And that's what I see. But they have to play a clean game. They can't make the mistakes that they've made in the past. Like Tennessee is a game that they should have won. If they win that game, Billy Napier's safe, in my opinion. It's not even a question.
Yeah.
But you're inside the red zone, tight red zone, 3-4 times in the first half. You got 7 points. You got to take advantage of those opportunities if you're Florida tomorrow, if you want to win this game. You got to do that.
And you kind of set me up for the next question here. As a former defensive player yourself, if you're Georgia, who would have posed more of a threat, Lagway or Mertz, in this situation? Obviously, we only have one, but personally, who poses more of that threat this weekend?
Well, Mertz is what he is, right? He's accurate with the football. He's on time. He's a veteran. So, that presents one thing. But I always think DJ Lagway presents more of a problem because of his ability to be able to run when he has to. But also, this guy has a cannon on his right shoulder. So, that part of it where I got to cover guys 50, 60 yards down the field,
right,
and the ball still lies. As a defensive back, that's a difference. And I have to chart that down because, it's a difference when I got to cover guys as hard as I can for 40 yards or 45 yards. And then I can start to be ready to play versus the ball that can go 60 to 65. That's a different ball game and a different mindset as a defensive back that I'm still live when I'm 50 yards down the field. I still got to be ready and covering guys and being in position to make a play because the quarterback can still get it there. So for me, I always look at those type of quarterbacks as the more dangerous ones and the more elusive guys also.
Yeah, too. And, especially in Gainesville, not just nationally, but everybody talks about Lagway's ceiling and his ability, his arm, like you just said, his ability to use his legs. Do you see a weak spot that the Gators should focus on with DJ, maybe how they approach this game, that they need to suit up before and button up before they face, a Georgia Bulldogs team that's bullied them for the past couple of years?
Yeah, you have to be able to run the football. And I'm not saying you're going to just bully Georgia. Nobody does that. But, effectively calling run games, not leaving it and making sure run game is still up for 4 quarters and not just being a one-dimensional team offensively. That is what they need to do. So, effectively, what's effective run for Florida? 3 yards on first down, 3 or 4 yards on a 2nd and 10, right? So now it's 3rd and manageable. Staying on time in a manageable situation. So now, because, when defenses when it's 3rd and 2 to 5, it's not as exotic as when you get to 3rd and 8, 12.
Of course.
Now teams feel like they're going to do everything under the sun. They can fool you. They can trick you. You're going to get a lot more different things and exotic looks. And so if you can keep it in 3rd and manageable, that cuts down on what Georgia's going to be able to do defensively because most teams just want to play man-to-man coverage in that zone or that area of 3rd downs. And so you'll know what you're going to get more often than not as well. So now I just have my man beaters up. And if that doesn't happen, quarterback, if you see a lane, go get first down. And so it's just the mind switch of staying on time for Florida will be key and vital to their success if they plan on trying to win this game.
I agree. And right off that, too, you keep setting me up. I appreciate it. But Georgia's going to be without 2 of their top tacklers. Yeah, I appreciate it. But, those two of their top defenders on the perimeter, as well as some of their top tacklers, will be missing in the first half for Georgia. How much of an opportunity do you see that for Lagway, like you're saying, to be able to spread the field and have time in the pocket? How much of an opportunity do you see that early and often to try to set the tone and score for this team with those key pieces in Georgia not going to be able to be in the mix in the first half?
I feel like Georgia will miss the corner less than the safety. The safety's a really good player.
Yeah.
He makes a lot of plays for Georgia. He flies around with an attitude. He gets there in a hurry, and he's made some really good plays for Georgia this year. So for me, it's going to be that part of it. And also, what we don't give safeties enough credit for is that they're quarterback of the defense. They get guys lined up by making all the calls in the secondary, seeing with the linebackers, making sure everybody's on the same page with the secondary piece. Like, that part can't be stated enough that they will miss that part of his game. And so, especially in a confusing defense, not confusing, but a heady defense that usually has a lot of things that they make checks to, and they have a lot of communication pieces. You can't put enough emphasis on that.
And then just kind of flipping from Georgia's defensive side to Florida's, they're going to be without Jason Marshall on Saturday. He had one of the best coverage grades in the country before he went down for the season. I mean, obviously it's a big loss for Coach Armstrong's unit, but just how big of an impact does this have on the rest of the secondary, filtering all the way down to the Mike linebackers and the defensive front?
Hey, look, I just need Florida to tackle.
Yeah.
Florida has not tackled well enough for me. I care about covering, but Georgia's going to beat you if you miss tackles. So you have to be able to get guys on the ground. That is something that Florida has struggled with, even when they played good versus Tennessee. When they had to have it moments, they missed a running back in the flat. Or next, they missed Dylan Stewart by the red zone. Instead of making it third down, now it's a touchdown. So, when those opportunities arise, you have to be able to tackle in space. And if Florida tackles well in space, I don't care who's playing corner. It's going to be the tackling aspect of Florida's defense is what will make me excited about their chances. And if they do that, they get a chance. And then hopefully you can steal a possession by interception or a turnover somewhere in there. 1 or 2 would be great. More than 2. 2 or more.
Yeah, and someone who's very hard to tackle and is very familiar with Florida, Trevor Etienne. I don't know. I'm sure you have past experience with teammates going to different teams, whether it's college or NFL. You've had teammates bouncing you. There's some animosity, but there's some competition there. How much is it inside those locker rooms? They're thinking of, let's go get back on Trevor, and Trevor on the same thing. What do you think is in those minds of those players this weekend that gives them a little more oomph than usual?
Well, it's always like we want to make him pay, right?
Right.
He left or he's no longer here or we know a little bit more about his game than that person. That will be interesting. It's just really hard to do with Georgia because Georgia spreads it out so much.
So well.
It's never just an ETN type focus of game. Like, they just use him as they would use their other running backs. And it's just, so it's really hard to focus on just that, the way Georgia plays their game. Now, for Florida, you should use anything as ammo or anything as bulletin board material for, if you ever saw a write-up on why he left or what he thinks better here. Like, you can just continue to remind those guys of that because any type of motivation could work in these situations, and you need every single one of them if you're in Florida. Whatever gets your pistol hot, bro, you got to use that. And so, for me, that is why I look at it from that angle, but it's very, very hard to sit up here and say specifically Etienne's going to be that guy or that one motivating factor because Georgia doesn't use anybody in one directly way. They use so many because they got so many different weapons, and Carson Beck spreads the ball around as much as he does.
And then kind of one last question about Florida before I get into some second stuff. Jack Pyburn, it just came to my head. This quote about being the hammer, not the nail, and running through your face, that just goes right to it. How much does that fire you up? Because especially it's hard enough for a defensive player to make hits and make tackles in today's game. Just how much does that want to fire you up as your own secondary, as your own group and unit, whether it's offense and defense, going into this game?
Well, man, look, the statement that we would always use when I play was, man, sometimes you got to put the face in the fan, right? Like, that's just part of the business. And sometimes you got to want it more than he does. Tackling is 85% want to. How bad do I want to come up with a body part? How bad do I want to get that guy down? And what's my effort level on the way to that guy and to that collision? And sometimes you got to get on the train tracks. And when I got ran over one time, they told me, hey, man, sometimes when you play on a dirt road, you're going to get a little dusty. That's part of the game. That's part of your job. And so that would be the determining factor for Florida. And how long are you willing to stay into the fight? And how many more times are you going to put your face in the fan? I know Mr. Clyburn's ready, but are you going to bring other 10 or 12 other guys with you and put their faces in the fan too? Because it takes a little bit of sacrifice when you're playing defense. And it's going to be ugly. And not every tackle you're going to end up on top. But that's okay, because as long as he's on the ground, you give yourself a chance to line up and play again. That's the mentality, and you got to be willing to do it for longer and harder than they have.
It's certainly going to get a little dusty this weekend, that's for sure. That's for sure. We can see it coming. But yeah, thanks for that right there. I'll kind of zoom out a little bit. Just overall, halfway through the first year in this newly expanded playoff, I just kind of want to get your thoughts on it, the current state as we creep up into this bracket. Is it good for football? Is it bad for football? I mean, potential tiebreakers are with these bigger conferences that could be brewing towards the end. What's your opinion on this current state of it right now as we move into the first time we've seen it?
I think it's excellent for football. More teams are more in the conversation for longer. One loss doesn't kill you anymore, and the expanded SEC as well is just going to be tougher and tougher. The recruiting is going to get more crazy. The portal would be a little bit more things to talk about. It's just more. And anytime you're offering more opportunities to more players, I'm never against that. I hate the fact that they play so many more games than when I played because you only get one body and, not all those things are taken care of and sewn up because of all the money and all the other things, the insurances and the way of football is. Football is a very violent game. So I understand that part of it. But as a fan that gets to watch more games and we get to see more rivalries being built right in front of us, and rivalries are all about the matchup. And so, LSU and Alabama wasn't always a rivalry. But when Nick Saban came back to Alabama, it heated up to a rivalry really fast. And so you're going to find more really good teams playing against each other. And for me, I love that, especially in the Big Ten, the SEC. It's going to be really, really good. And we're going to see who gets in. And we're also going to see that just because you get a bye in the first week doesn't mean you get to win in the second one. Somebody's going to get popped that had a bye. Mm-hmm. It's just part of it. And I love the fact that these playoffs aren't going to get moved. So where you're bracketed at the start is where you're going to finish. And so it's not going to be the highest ranked versus the lowest ranked team like they do in the NFL.
Right.
Where you set in the bracket will determine where you're going to be at. We're going to have some exciting home games in the first round of playoffs, things we haven't seen before. And nobody's still been able to answer the question to me because bowl games are 50-50 split. What would the home ratio be? You got to give more than the normal 5 or whatever % that they give to away teams just because of the opportunity it's going to be. But you still want some form of home field advantage. These are the things that I'm looking forward to. And nobody's ever been able to answer that question for me yet. So if you figure it out, Jesse, please let me know.
I will. I think you're a little more educated on that as right now as I am, but it's certainly gonna. I'm not saying it's gonna get messy, but it's gonna make fans want to watch it more. It's doing exactly the job that it was in place to do, and it gives more teams more say, and it gives not the smaller guy, but it gives the little guy a voice. And so I think it's for a reason.
Boise losing to Oregon,
yes,
they would have had no chance in the O form. Now they just got to keep winning, and they're going to be right there as one of the highest ranked non-Power 4 conference teams, and they're going to be in. And they have exciting players too. The Genty boy is going to be exciting for the national stage to see. So these are the things that we're going to be able to really be able to glorify, be able to put more eyes on top of, and that is what I'm excited about, is that we're going to be able to talk about other teams that we have not traditionally been able to talk about. And all it does is help with recruiting. Because once you become a playoff team, you now can recruit off of that. We are a playoff, blah, 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 participant.
That's a good point.
We can talk about that. So, you will be able to recruit off of those things as well. It's not just showing up one time and no. Once you make it once, you actually get to say, we're a playoff caliber team. A lot of teams will not be able to say that, including SEC teams that have not been able to say that. But Boise might be able to say that. Same thing, Cincinnati has been able to say that we are a playoff caliber team.
Yeah.
We can recruit off those things. Ole Miss can't say that. Arkansas can't say that. So that's what I'm saying. You're going to see those things start to happen. And as the transfer portal continues to be as crazy as it is, depth has been an issue for a lot of teams, and it has leveled the playing field completely in college football.
That was my next question too. Just how I didn't realize that. The more you say it, it makes sense of how it levels out for other teams, and the Alabamas and the Clemsons and the Crimson Tides of the world, all those teams that have they're not as rich, and it kind of levels them out. So how much do you see them uproaring about that, making it a problem? Do you see it really making a difference to see a change in the next few years for the bracket, or you think it's going to stick to how it is and not be moved?
Let me tell you something. When I was in the NFL, we had a big lockout, and the one thing they continued to tell all the players, including the owners as well, that's why you never saw a lot of argument in public, was that the common people don't want to hear about the rich people arguing with other rich people. And so when you hear of Clemson, nobody's rooting for Alabama. They already got everything. Nobody's rooting for Georgia to get more. Nobody cares. Nobody nobody roots for the rich to get more rich. That's just not how America works. That's not how the world works. And so we root for you on the way up the mountain. Then once you get there, you stay up there a little longer. They're like, all right,
let's find somebody else.
Yeah, let's find somebody else. That is what the cycle of life is. And so nobody's going to be rooting for them, and nobody's going to feel sorry for them. So they can root and bitch and complain all they want.
Right.
But the fact remains the same that the transfer portal is not going anywhere. They continue to try and shape it up, and eventually the market will set itself as far as NIL is concerned. But for me, the transfer portal is the main objective if you want to get college football straight. You get that worked out, have guys being able to sign into contracts, whatever their scholarship is going to be, whatever the pay thing is. When you get all these things ironed out, then we're going to see what the final college football product is going to be. But we're a couple years away from that for right now.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely see that too. And kind of circling back real quick. So say Georgia does lose to Florida, whether it's a close game or not. Say Florida does pull the upset. How concerned are you for Georgia, making a run at the SEC championship? Say they get there as well and lose. Do you see Georgia getting in the playoff with that many losses? That's an if and but scenario. With Texas A&M playing as well as they're playing, say Alabama goes and wins out. How concerned are you starting right here with Georgia if they lose this weekend, though?
Hey, look, man, it's going to be crazy because what if Texas A&M loses to South Carolina this
year?
That's their second loss, first in the SEC. Then they lose to Texas or something. They got 2 losses. Georgia takes another L. That's 2 for them as well. Alabama finishes undefeated. That's 2 for them as well. Who gets in? And are you going to not put in the SEC championship loser?
Right.
And put in somebody that didn't even play in the SEC championship over them because they have less losses.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can say you're going to do that either. So all these things could get a little messy, but I love it because I don't get to watch Maury Povich anymore because it's no longer on TV. So it's college football, and I'm all here for it, bro. This is what I do. This is what I live for.
Hey, man, it also gives a little bit more room to play with it. As of, either you had to win out the whole year, and if you lost one, you're done. It gives way more opportunity to mess with the Play-Doh and see where you can place things.
This is what it's all about, dude. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be a wild finish. I just don't think it's as, a lot of Texas fans came into the SEC thinking, like, we're going to be just fine. It's not as bad as we think. And then you're like, oh, you know what? This is a lot harder.
Wake up.
You guys only got beat down by one team. So, but you were in a dogfight versus Vandy as well, which that is what Vanderbilt has been this year for everybody.
Yeah. So just kind of filtering out of the football scheme, you get football questions all the time. I'm a people person above all. Just curiously, you've jumped in headfirst in the media side for a while now. Just for you, how do you keep a balance, and how have you adjusted to learning those different skills? Any advice you have for me or someone else that wants to keep pushing through this as well as you?
So for me, man, when I first started, bro, I was not confident.
Yeah.
I knew ball, but like I didn't know.
Portray that.
You don't know what you don't know. And so what I would do early on, like the first couple of years, I would do a lot of reading of all these other books and everybody else's opinions and all these other things. And I've learned that that's just not me. And so what I've done is I've become more confident in my own opinion. Like I read less about other people because their opinions become my opinions instead of just watching the game.
Yeah.
Instead of just telling me what my eyes are telling me. And my honest opinion about, no, they're still non-professionals. They're still going to have hiccups. And when teams start telling you stuff, believe it. Like, don't look at the paper. Don't look at the Vegas. Like, Vegas is great. But, like, what's your feel? And I go with that now. And for me, that's been my biggest asset. It's like, nah, Rome, you know ball, bro. Just, like, go with that part and just be a ball guy.
Yeah.
Just go with my gut and be a ball guy. Like, you know what's right, wrong. You know who's struggling where. And you watch enough of these teams where I know exactly what I'm talking about when I'm looking at these teams.
Right. And then, so, too, just going off that, for me, my faith is huge with me, the way I lead with everything, and just all routine-oriented. How much do you try to incorporate, if faith is big for you as well, whatever you believe, how do you find a way to incorporate that? And, you work for ESPN. It's a big corporation. It's a big organization. And you go on different shows. How do you find your way to incorporate that, your beliefs and your faith, everywhere you go in media?
Well, let me tell you something, man. My walk in faith has been a journey. I still read my Bible on a day-to-day basis. Maybe not every day, but majority of the days I read every morning. And so I really try to stay grounded. I'm around my kids a lot. I try and be a father first. That's the most important thing in my life. And, you know, and at the end of the day, bro, like, being a man of faith isn't just saying that. You got to walk it.
Yeah.
And the moment, I never forget, you know, the moment I turned my life over to Christ, they was like, man, congrats. But, like, now the journey really starts. Now it gets hard because now you'll be able to see and notice the difference between sin, right? And
Yeah.
what's not sin. Like, that's when you really save and you give your life to Christ. And all of a sudden you can see sin for the first time. It's the same thing that happened with Adam and Eve, you know, when all of a sudden they ate the apple. Next thing you know, they were like, oh, man, we're naked. What is up? We're covering ourselves up. So that is what you got to understand, in that you're not perfect. And I stopped blaming myself for a lot of mistakes that I made in the past. I stopped blaming myself. I don't even feel bad for a lot of things I do now because it's just what life is supposed to be.
It's our walk.
And so, yeah, and, you know, Jesus didn't die for us for the good people. He did it for the broken, the ill-willed, the sick, you know, and so continue to make sure I never forget those things, that no matter how bad my day is, there's a lot of people that got it way worse than me, and that I don't have a lot of bad days because of that. You know, my bad days just wasn't a great one. Wasn't bad, just wasn't my best, and that's fine. And just continue to keep that attitude, continue to chop wood at it, and just never stop believing in myself, because God's brought me too far and all of a sudden let me fail now. He ain't turned his back on me yet. So I'll just continue to understand those things and just try to put one foot forward in front of the other, man. Always continue to try and take the narrow path. Don't take the easy way, because anything worth having in life is hard. And so I understand that on a day-to-day basis, especially being married. So, you know, that's just part of it, man. And that's kind of my walk in my journey, and kind of part of my testimony. You know, it's not my whole thing, but it's just a piece of it.